welcome. So, we're going to go over the endocrine function of the stomach. So, here's a beautiful drawing. So start off with the simplest one. They're called the foveolar cells. These are not, I'm not worried about the anatomical location, so don't quote me on where I'm drawing them. We're just going to get the general function in, okay? So first, called foveolar cells. Just going to put them right here. They are what form the mucus coating of the entire stomach. So that's going to be obviously protect you from ulcers and heartburn and stuff like that, because if you're getting past the mucus, then you're hitting the endothelium, and that's not going to feel very good. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. So that's that one. Next, we'll get into a few of the others. So the first couple you'll probably be rather familiar with. Hopefully you can see the yellow, but we'll call them parietal cells. I'll put them over here. So parietal cells make HCl and intrinsic factor. So HCl is acid, stomach acid, which is extremely important for virtually everything. So we'll get back to that. But intrinsic factor is what helps you absorb vitamin B12. So without enough of that, you're going to have the megaloblastic anemia and other problems, kind of all over the place, particularly with nervous system stuff. And if you've got proton pump inhibitor, like omeprazole or pantoprazole or rabeprazole, whatever, Nexium, all of those guys, they are going to come irreversibly bind to the parietal cell. So most of these stomach cells are going to have continuous turnover every like 1 to 2 weeks. So they're pretty good at recovering, which is good news for us, because if we need to change the function of something, you can heal quite a bit. And that's evidenced by those drugs, because they literally kill the cells. So anytime you're doing that, you're kind of eliminating a lot of important stuff. So if someone's been on that for a long period of time, or if someone is on proton pump inhibitors, don't even bother treating the stomach. Yeah, you're not going to really get anywhere. And you'll kind of see why. Or you might just complicate things a little bit. They need to be at a place or willing to stop them, or get off them soon, right? It needs to be a transitory time. They can't stay on a PPI and then have you treat the stomach, because it will not heal, okay? The way that it should anyway. Next, we got the Chi cells. Put them here just for the kicks. We're doing these ones first because these two are inseparably connected, as in a lot of them are. But so this makes pepsinogen and gastric lipase. So pepsinogen is inactive. It is a precursor to pepsin, which is going to break down the protein bonds into some smaller amino acids, because if you're not in short chain amino acids, by the time you hit the duodenum over here, you're not going to absorb them, and that will result in, over time, your food sensitivities. Okay, so if you're developing more and more, someone's developing more and more, they're likely not doing these together. So now pepsinogen is activated by HCl. Comes over here, that cleaves one of the bonds and activates it to pepsin. So, take omeprazole, you kill production of HCl, you make your pepsinogen and not break down your protein. Another recipe for food sensitivities, right? And most of you probably knew that already. but there you go. If you didn't, so those guys are pretty key. Next up, let's just do, we'll go the G cells. So, then you got G cells or gastrin producing cells. This one's pretty cool. It's going to stimulate a couple of things. So one, it'll directly increase HCl production, and it will secondarily, we'll do another orange one. This is the enterochromaffin-like cells, ECL cells, and they produce histamine, which will also, gotta go slower, also increases stomach acid production from the parotid cells. So G cells will both directly and indirectly increase acid production. Okay, these guys respond to amino acids, so when you get some amino acid presence within the stomach, that will increase gastrin production, which will increase hydrochloric acid production. Two different mechanisms. This also makes a protective peptide to prevent against parasites and H. pylori infection. Put a little negative there. Okay. And make the inhibitory stuff more red is the idea. So anyway, so that one's kind of cool in how that one works. The gastrin is also going to change the contractility of the stomach, so it'll start churning, starting up the cement mixer, right? So there's that. ECL cells, enterochromaffin-like cells, primarily just increasing stomach acid as well. Next up, we'll do kind of the heavy hitter, because we need some space to write this guy. So we're going to put it over here. We're going to call it the XA cell. Actually, we're not going to call it that. That's what they call it. They say that in humans it's a PD1 cell, but I think they still refer to it as an XA cell a lot of the times. So whatever. X because they don't know part of the function, and A because it's like a pancreatic alpha cell, which does glucagon. So that does various functions. So we got, it's one of the only pleritrophic hormone production in the gut that'll affect the central nervous system. So it makes, the biggest guy it makes is ghrelin, and that is the one. That one goes up to the hypothalamus. And also hits the pituitary and a few others, but we'll start there. So hypothalamus just stimulates how it stimulates hunger, which will then go send orexin down here to the enterochromaffin cell. I'm going to do EC cell, which then releases 5-HT serotonin. Again, another influence from the SSRIs for mental health, which screws with the gut and can cause mental health problems. We won't talk about that much right here now, though, right now. Anyway, so that does this. They also have some gastrin in there, so it can also stimulate more acid secretion, and it helps regulate the entire, gets the whole stomach and digestive tract prepared for a meal. And these guys, this will downregulate the sympathetic nervous system, so does ghrelin, so they both do. bringing it down so you can handle a meal. And this kind of circuit will play a role in a little bit of an antidepressant effect, which is why some people binge eat because it makes them feel good, and that's how it makes them feel good. So when you're depressed in the sympathetic nervous system, we'll just kind of do this, inhibit sympathetic nervous system, and this does that as well, kind of indirectly, or directly as well. So that's that. So this is not as big as a direct effect on the immediate stomach as it is everything. So it's going to start the hunger, satisfaction, digestion process, make it more efficient, more effective. And then now we'll shift back to the XA cells. So XA cells will also send information to the pancreas, and it will inhibit insulin production. It goes over here to the liver to regulate gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis. Those are important, right? Let's see. And then it goes to muscle tissue. Say stimulate, because it helps with fiber differentiation and fusion. And it goes to bones. Regulates osteoblast activity, or osteoblast differentiation. So that regulates bone formation that way. This is the stimulation of hunger over here. It also goes over here to another part of the hypothalamus, and there it inhibits thermogenesis. To regulate temperature, to regulate energy expenditure, right? In more like in the presence of hunger, not after you eat. So if you're getting that starving sensation or experience, you want to conserve energy. It's going to do, one way it's going to do it is by decreasing how much heat you're producing. That way. Then the other part of that reward antidepressant effect is these guys come down and they'll stimulate oxytocin and ADH, both increase XA cell production. So that'll feed into that loop, right? Here's your pleasure hormone. And then a couple other things that'll stimulate it. Cannabinoids. Right, so you get the munchies if someone's on weed. But you also have endocannabinoids, right, which help with pain and again, more kind of happy feelings. And that's going to situationally, increase hunger, make you want to eat, that kind of thing. And then the other one is interleukin 1. Inhibits it. So it's an inflammatory marker. Yeah. So we're going to run with that for now. enterochromaffin cells. So these guys will increase the vasointestinal peptide, will help them kind of be ready for secretion. So they're going to produce mostly the chloride, which is the primary lubricant in the intestines, and it will regulate the motility and secretions throughout the whole gut. Now, not just the enterochromaffin cells within the stomach, they're all throughout the intestines, but this is where it all begins. And then it's also could be it's a strong regulator of like energy balance, and they say potentially more so than the actual hypothalamus itself. In our experience, I don't know if I could say if that's 100% true or not, because there's definitely differences with both. More likely it's just where's that person's problem where you'll have that effect. Then so yeah, energy balance is important for that. And then ghrelin, the XA cells also secrete obistatin and nucleobindin 2 or nesfatin 1. And they're actually a pretty big portion of the stomach. 20 to 30% of these endocrine cells are XA cells. Now, it's the primary ligand for growth hormone, so that's kind of where I think some of this stuff comes into play with the muscles and bones and adipose tissue. This has connections with the heart, the pituitary, the hypothalamus, the thyroid, muscle, bone, and adrenal gland, spleen, pancreas, and vagal afferents. And then inside the brain, they'll form heterodimers with other receptors, primarily dopamine and cannabinoid receptors. So again, it's more of this reward stuff, but it is a short-lived thing. So, so eating's not like you get that short-term reward. People feel better when they binge eat, or not everybody, but some. So that's why they do it. But it's not like this. It doesn't last for days or anything. It's pretty momentary. So you kind of have that like addiction, right? People, they almost care more about the perceived reward of eating something rather than the actual process of eating it. Because once it gets in your body and it's sugary, crappy food, then you just feel terrible afterwards. So that really didn't carry over or overpower that actual effect, right? But it's that beginning. So it's short and fast, but powerful, and it can cross borders a little bit. So these guys are a big deal. Especially with people who just don't have an appetite or hunger or anything like that. That's pretty good. You need to be looking at both of them, but those are important. Now we've got a couple things left. So you've got, let's see, I'm going to make these guys here, so they're going to call these the tough cells. Tough cells are also located throughout the intestines, but they are important for autoimmune prevention and other infections, and they help prevent metaplasia and dysplasia. So metaplasia is the beginning of changing tissues, and dysplasia is when they've actually changed and they've become new types of endothelium and so forth. And this is all precursors to cancers and stuff. So tough cells are important to keep you from getting there. So if anybody's got an autoimmune disease, though, these guys are a little dysregulated for sure. Then we got another one, another cool cell. We'll just put up here. I call it gastric neck cells. They're not going to be here. They'll be over that way more. But these guys can become any of those guys. So pretty much just what do you need? and they'll migrate. So they'll travel wherever these guys are located specifically, and they will become a parietal cell, an enterochromaffin cell, an ECL cell, whatever. One other thing to notate about the ECL cell is it creates histamine, right? So then you have those H1 receptor blockers like Zantac, ranitidine, cimetidine, whatever. Those guys are going to block here, so if someone's got a history of those, we'll probably need to treat those. And then we'll go last one, stick it in the middle for convenience, called the delta or D cells. And these guys inhibit hunger, they inhibit acid secretion, they inhibit pretty much everything. Tell the enzymes to stop being produced. Yeah, like this. And they just inhibit everything else. So it makes somatostatin primarily. Let's say most cases of gastric or heartburn or gastroesophageal reflux is going to be low acid, right? At least in America, where everybody overeats and takes. Anyway, so that's going to be the case. So mostly they're going to need things to break their food down better. Now, in some cases, which I feel are much more rare, people really do overproduce acid. That's when you really need to focus on that. I mean, this is still probably going to be there because we also have, especially in America, again, people that don't know how to stop eating or when to just kind of turn it off a little bit, right? So that's going to be in the middle of a lot of things, but when it comes to just reflux, this will be more important for someone who actually overproduces acid. And I believe that is all the high points. Yeah. There are, okay, just one last thing. So if you're working on a thyroid problem, you need to work on the thyroid, pituitary, hypothalamus, gut. Some of these guys, if you're having a missing link, think they're median eminence, obviously. And then we'll get into more, like the sexual organs, the ovaries, and testes are going to have a role with it too. Won't go over what those are right now. If you're going through appetite issues, you need to do hypothalamus, enterochromaffin cells, XA cells, and then potentially some other things depending on how deeply rooted the psychological issue is. Now, another thing is if someone has H. pylori or an ulcer or something, and you start treating stuff, it might get a little rough for a little bit because it'll really make it apparent because you have dysfunctions that got it there in the first place. So when things start to change, be ready for things to change. And as you can see, there's like no function in here that's isolated. I guess I need to say, every single one of these cells has an enteric nervous system control of each one. So that's the signal coming from the nervous system to control each of these. So like this whole signal, right, that would be within the enteric nervous system, okay? So there is an enteric nervous system division stomach to the enterochromaffin cells, and one of the chief cells. And the enteric nervous system has just as many connections as the spinal cord itself, so there are tons. And when you are treating this, the enteric nervous system portion of any of these functions has to be intact for this to be effective. So make sure you're treating that first, or at least checking it to see if it does need to be treated. If it doesn't, move on, that's fine. But if it needs it, don't even try to do the endocrine cell. Right? This is the continuous portion that's controlling the signal. This has rollover every week. So this needs to be working for that to actually regenerate and change and have the appropriate function. And then once you treated it, it may take up to a week to have a full effect. Although there does seem to be rather immediate change, but some things tend to seem to settle in a little bit better over time. don't think I finished saying what I was saying. But if you're gonna start treating something, you need to be aware to tell that person, hey, this may take several treatments. It's kind of hard to say, hey, you just need one or two. It's like, I think there's like 16 pieces here. I haven't had to treat all 16 before, but I've had to treat several. Probably up to like 8 to 10 on a few people. Those that have pretty severe intestine problems, you're probably gonna treat all of them. But anybody in between, it can be quite significantly less, but rarely is it one or two, so just expect a couple. So they need to be aware and probably have the appointments fairly close to each other so you don't end up increasing acid and not having a break, right? And things change as you treat them too, so just be prepared to handle the problems if they arise. Again, it's like anything else we do, it doesn't happen as often as you're getting better, but it does happen, and you don't ever want to leave somebody in that situation if you don't have to, or if they just run away from you. But that's about where you are. All right. Happy treating is pretty awesome.